From the Great Rocky Mountains with photographers from all over the world, you are listening to the Rocky Mountain Photography Show. I'm your host, Jeff Futter, and thank you for listening. This is episode 16, and today we're going to be talking a bit about wildlife. Joining me today for this conversation will be Terry W. Smith, Pete Bengeyfield, Mark Schocken, and of course myself. Terry, do you want to start us out by telling me a little bit about your adventures in wildlife photography?
Yeah, I can. When we were on the other day, I kind of mentioned my journey and I kind of got started with, kind of proving to people some of the things I saw, just as proof, and a lot of times it was, can you see the deer? Can you see the elk in the picture? And I migrated into serious photography and decided, that's what I wanted to do. And of course, back in the 80s, that wasn't paying the bills for me. And so I had to, have a full-time job, but then kept the photography going. And then as we raised our children, I kind of took a break. And then the digital photography happened while I was taking that break. So when I came back, it was kind of a new learning curve. And then I picked it up and ran with it and kind of, I would say, picked up where I went. I was getting some publications and book covers and that sort of thing. And but with the digital, I think it just helped improve my photography where I knew more what I was doing and more of the creative aspect of it. And so today, I used to chase the publications, the covers, the calendars, all that. It's more about creating a beautiful image that's appealing. And if I get published, if I get paid for it, fine. But that's not what's driving me these days. But I absolutely love it. I love picking up a camera. I love creating images, and um, and when other people like them too, then that's bonus.
Yep, absolutely. And what about you, Mark? Can you tell me a little bit about your endeavors with wildlife photography?
I started out actually at 13, learning photography from my dad and my uncle, but not wildlife photography, more portrait and street photography. And I did that for a while. And then I interestingly went to pharmacy school and became a pharmacist and really didn't like it. So a pharmacist works in those days like 9 to 5, 9 to 6. And I didn't like it so much that I embraced photography when I wasn't working and got into all kinds of black and white development in my apartment back in Baltimore in those days and was staying up till 2 o'clock to kind of offset a job that I didn't like. But then I did the job for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years, and I went back to graduate school in chemistry. And I did like that a lot. And but it was very demanding, and the pharmacy, I'm sorry, the photography kind of had to take a back seat for quite a while. I did some, but not a lot. And then in 2013, 13 years ago, my wife and I moved from Massachusetts to Florida. And I just couldn't get over the wildlife in Florida, particularly the birds, and got back into the photography and started photographing, going out every day because I'm a consultant now. So I got a chance to kind of set my own hours and go out every day and was able to photograph, um, the mainly the raptors, the owls and the eagles and the harriers. And then we spent some time in New England now, in New Hampshire, and I photographed primarily the common loons and their families. So I don't do it. I never did it for a living. Um, I'm consider myself kind of a semi-professional. So I make a little bit of money, which is fine. I don't really care. I'm mostly retired at this point, and I just love wildlife photography. Life is good.
There's nothing wrong with that. My primary source of income is actually in IT, so I do photography mostly as kind of a side business. I do make a bit of money from it, so I do consider myself somewhat of a professional. But but yeah, most of my income comes from IT. How about you, Pete? What is your story?
Well, I'm from Long Island originally, but my favorite view of Long Island was in the rearview mirror. And I came out west and got into photography through backpacking and kind of went through the hobby, passion, obsession progression. And it's about all I do now. I live close to Yellowstone, and so I can go there anytime I want. I work for the Forest Service, and I guess my overall goal is to use my technical knowledge and marry that with pretty pictures, and hope people get the idea how important our public lands are. That's my story.
I'm guessing your time at the Forest Service gives you kind of an opportunity to get out with the camera and um, really get some amazing images.
Well, I never photographed at work because the light was always bad. So it's strictly weekends and vacations, and now I've been retired.
Where is everybody's favorite place to shoot wildlife? For me personally, I'd have to say Yellowstone. I'm only about a 4 hour drive away from Yellowstone, so um, I can, wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, head up to Yellowstone, and be there at 8, and um, you know, it- and spend the whole day there. But where's everybody else's favorite place?
Well, I think for me, of course, I'm in New Hampshire right now. So I would say being on the water in a kayak, photographing loons. And if you've ever, I don't know if you guys have seen loons, but there is something incredibly special about this particular waterfowl. And from the vocalizations that just then chills up your spine to watching, a 1 day old chick ride on mom or dad's back. It's just, and the perspective you get, of course, from a kayak where you're eye to eye with the animal is just absolutely amazing. I've never experienced anything like this with the lines. So, of course, so if I'm in Florida, I'm going to tell you the barred owls, but right now I'm going to tell you the lines.
I have a variety of places. I grew up in Western Oregon, and so the Oregon coast at times is spectacular when the shorebirds are migrating, and even year round. There's year round subjects, waterfowl, and then even big game along the coast. That's a favorite place. But I moved to Central Oregon about 5 years ago, and so I spend some time in our local wetlands in Central Oregon. I live in Prineville, Oregon. But on a broader spectrum, I've been photographing Yellowstone since the 80s. That is a favorite place as well. And back in the day, and Pete would remember this, that it was the go-to for elk. And then that's sort of changed. It's kind of hard to find good
Yep.
elk in Yellowstone these days. And so I kind of converted over to Rocky Mountain National Park in Colorado, which at times is spectacular. But it's since the COVID time, shall we say, uh, that's totally changed the permits and everything, and it's not as fun to go there. It's crowded. There's so many people, but you can still get away to some nice scenic areas with nice wildlife there. But it's a great destination. The Tetons are also fantastic at times.
I'm from Eastern
Like,
Oregon originally, about 20 miles south of Pendleton, and that area is actually pretty good for elk as well. We had a ton of elk just I mean, I lived out in the country, and our fields would just be covered with them.
Yeah.
We see elk on
well,
our way back from New Hampshire to go to Florida. We stop off in the Smoky Mountains and we see elk in a town called Cherokee, where the elk were actually introduced about 20 years ago. And the herd is, I think it's pushing 100 now. And we go down in October for the rut and we spend about 3 days there. And, the Smokies with the fog and just the, just what the Smoky Mountains are and when you watch the elk and photograph them, it's just absolutely amazing. And I've been to Colorado, Rocky Mountain National Park, and that was really good too. But I really have a special feeling for the Smoky Mountains and the elk there.
Well, I'll have to second the Yellowstone because I've been there so much, but I'm getting kind of Yellowstoned out. There's just too many people, and their behavior around the animals is pretty awful sometimes. And so I'm starting to go different places. I've photographed in 40 some national parks, and so I'm going to kind of wean myself off of Yellowstone. I never thought I'd say that, but
Do you ever spend any time in Yellowstone in the winter?
oh yeah, yeah. And the snow coaches are the way to go. And you get a lot more variety off the snow coaches. You do that drive out to Lamar, and really all you see are bison, and the wolves are so far away now that it's not even worth stopping for photography. So yeah, I've been quite a bit in the winter.
What is everybody's favorite job as far as wildlife photography goes? Have you any of you had assignments by, freelance assignments or anything like that that you can tell me about that what is your favorite job as far as that goes?
I just do this for myself. I don't sell pictures or I published a couple books, and I'd rather do it that way than work for somebody.
I did get an assignment for the Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation at one time, but it sounds like you'd be doing wildlife, but it was actually for an area here in Oregon. And it was kind of interesting because it was a different perspective. Because I primarily shoot just animals or birds, but it was a different to capture, some of the waterways and some of the terrain. So it just kind of mixed it up, made it a little bit interesting. I don't know if it was my favorite, but it was a change of pace, so to speak.
Do you go to Malheur very much?
I do the Malheur every November, and I also go
Hmm.
spring and summer. So yes, three, four, maybe five times a year.
Oh, okay. I've always wanted to spend some time there. It's never been on my route.
Malheur is it's a magical place at times, and it's this sounds like everybody says this, but 20 years ago it was much better. Uh, Management is different, the wildlife is different, and so there isn't near the subjects that there used to be, but it's still a great area.
Hmm. Well, I'll get there someday.
Where I live now, it's only 2.5 hours, well, 3 hours from my house, so I can go pretty much
Oh,
when I want now.
What kind of clothes do you all recommend for wildlife photography, especially in colder weather? Is there anything particular that you like to wear that helps out a lot?
For me, I always try to wear muted colors, nothing bright, nothing that's, white or anything like that. And I used to wear camo all the time. I don't near as much anymore. But I try to wear muted colors that aren't loud. And as far as warm stuff, just something that you can move around in, and then gloves that still allow you to run your camera. And that's why I use a lot of hand warmers because I like thin gloves. And then a good warm pair of boots.
Well, for me,
yeah,
spending time in Florida and New Hampshire in the summer, to be quite honest with you, shorts and um, trail shoes and t-shirts are really the attire for the day. Although I will say up here in New England, um, you got to be careful with the ticks. So I wear jeans and whatnot when I really don't want to sometimes, but I do. Um, but in the kayak, shorts and a t-shirt. But I would um, agree with Terry that I like to wear muted colors. I don't nothing bright. I don't really think camo is absolutely necessary, but um, I try to stay away from the really bright colored clothing.
I think for what we do in Yellowstone, camo is kind of silly. because I mean, most of it's from the road, and the animals usually see you get out of your car. So I don't know what camo would do for you in that type of photography. But you see a lot of guys wear it.
Well, I do have a feeling about camo when it has to do with the camera body and lens, particularly the lens. And I don't use a lens coat or anything like that. But when you watch the animals and you take this, 600 millimeter lens and point it at an owl, for example, I do believe that there's a certain amount of apprehension on the part of the animal that I keep thinking that I probably should get some kind of camouflage for the camera lens, not so much for my clothing or me. They know I'm there, but just pointing this. I mean, I have no idea why Canon and Sony in particular have to have these white bright lenses. I think Nikon doesn't, but Canon and Sony do, and I think the animals see that, and I think they'll look away, and sometimes you can spook them with, I think, just pointing a lens at them. I'm really thinking about some kind of lens code or something.
And I do use the lens coats, not necessarily for weather protection, but for I shoot Canon, and the big lenses are white, and I just think that white movement can cause you some issues. I mean, not everything I shoot's in a national park. In fact, most of the stuff I shoot's not, and so I'm trying to be concealed and try to, you don't want those quick movements, and again, I do more the lens coats on my lens for out, so I don't get hand marks on it, so I don't bump them, that sort of thing. Not necessarily for weather protection, because I
Well,
use a kind of a rain hood or something to put over if it's snowing or raining.
so speaking of lenses, what kind of equipment is everybody using? I don't really do a lot of wildlife photography, and a lot of the reason for that is my equipment just isn't up to par for it because of the autofocus on my Lumix S1R. It has a contrast-based autofocus, not a phase detect based autofocus. So it kind of punts in and out at any time. And, of course, you got to get those pictures quick. You can't be sitting there waiting for the autofocus to find it. But I've kind of looked into buying a micro four thirds camera and set of lenses. And the reason for that is, of course, the image sensor is half the size of my full frame image sensor. So a 300 millimeter lens is going to be equivalent to approximately 600 millimeter. And you can get a 100 to 400 millimeter lens, so approximately the same as a 200 to 800 for a very reasonable price. And they're not that heavy. They're a lot lighter than full frame lenses are. And what does everybody think about that? And what kind of equipment are you using?
I started out with Minolta, the old SRT 201. And so I went through the Konica Sony evolution, and now I just have Sony gear, and I have a complete range from 12 to 1200 with a 600 with a doubler. I use that quite a bit.
Well, as for me, I shoot Sony. I have a Sony A1 camera body and an A9 II. And I have the Sony 200 to 600. I would like sometimes the Sony, F4 600 prime, but I'm 78 years old. I've got a bad back, and I don't want to carry it. It's too heavy. And the other thing is, every time I talk about prime lenses, I get into situations where, the owl is 15 feet in front of me. And I want a zoom lens because a 600 will just be a portrait. So that's really basically my gear. Now, Jeff, the only thing I could ask you is on the smaller sensor, are you going to, in low light situations, are you going to have a problem with higher noise?
You know,
Because go ahead.
um, from a lot of the reviews I've read, they actually do a pretty good job. The OM Systems does a pretty good job in low light, which kind of surprised me because the APS-C compared to full frame of, it was a huge difference when I stepped up from that. Of course, I'm also using newer technology, but from everything I've read, they do pretty good in low light situations as far as higher ISOs go.
I have a friend in Colorado who shoots the Micro Four Thirds, and he loves it. Um, I don't think it works for what I want to do. I shoot Canon R5 Mark II and R5, 45 megapixels is it's a lot to work with, and it gives you a lot more latitude. But he shoots it, gets fantastic images, and he doesn't complain about the noise issues or anything like that. Plus, you get this reach that you kind of don't have with other systems.
I like to tell you one thing that I've been actually talking about lately. So when we're out with the loons in the kayak, and the loons have a family, so you're not really shooting one subject, you're shooting multiple subjects. So if you get too close, you have, first of all, you're going to stress the animal for sure. So you don't want to do that. And you can see it with the loons because their head rather gets squared off. First of all, you don't want to stress them, but also importantly, from a photography point of view, right? When you're close to them, and even for me, it's wide open, it's f6.3. If they're not really close to being in the same plane, one of them's going to not be in focus. If you back off and you have more distance, your depth of field is going to be greater. And remember, with the A1, it's a full frame, it's 50 megapixels. So you got a lot of pixels to work with. You can do a fair amount of cropping. And I realize now that really does make a difference. With one subject, that's a different story. But multiple subjects, you're always worrying about depth of field.
And my primary photography is nature photography, sunsets, waterfalls, landscapes, things like that. And for that, I would definitely keep my Lumix, my S1R. I absolutely love it, and it does a great job. I've got a full set of lenses for it, so there's no reason I wouldn't keep it. But I was thinking about just getting the Micro Four Thirds just for wildlife, and a lot of that is the longer reach with less weight. So a 100 to 400 lens weighs a lot less than a 200 to 800
Yeah.
on full frame.
And with that, I shoot a 600 f4 with teleconverters as well. Fantastic lens, and I love it. I don't love packing it around as much as I used to. Um, and I found I mentioned it the other day that I shoot the 200 to 800 as well, and that's a lens that I've actually fallen in love with. I believe it's the most underrated lens out there. It's fantastic. It shoots great sharp images, but it's light. You can pack it around all day, and you have with the ISOs we can shoot these days. I have not worried about when I can shoot it. I'm not shooting it before the sun comes up, right? But most people aren't anyway. That's f2.8, f4 range, and this is a f9. But I still love that lens. I just recently purchased, I can't even believe I did this, but the 100 to 300 f2.8, and then I got the RF teleconverter with that, and that lens is out of this world. It's so sharp, and I see me doing a lot of photography with that lens.
What would each of you consider to be the best photo that you've ever taken? Best wildlife photo, I should specify, that you've ever taken.
Oh, well, I just got one 2 years ago in Yellowstone, Cascade Meadows, and it's a grizzly standing on its hind legs looking at the camera, and then about 2 feet in front of it, there are two wolves looking up at the grizzly. And that's almost a once in a lifetime deal. And that's probably the best picture I've taken, or at least the most unusual.
I took a photo, it was back in the 2012 12 maybe. On the Oregon coast, we have an event every year. The common murres will nest on the rocks, and there's huge rocks just off the
Oh, yeah.
lighthouse.
Yeah.
And so they're within 600 millimeter range with teleconverter, all that sort of thing. Uh, well, what happens, they lay their eggs there, they nest there. The eagles have taught the young eagles to hunt them. And so they're easy prey. They go out there, but what they do is they wipe the murres off the rocks and then just take what they want, and then they linger around. So it affects the nesting and all that. But with this said, so they'll come and grab a murre and then fly it back to the mainland. So when the
Hmm.
adult came in and grabbed a murre, took off, and I was on and started shooting, a seagull came and landed on its back. And so that's probably the most unique image I've ever taken. I don't know that it's the best because I think I've taken so many better photos since then, but that one stands out and I've never been able to duplicate it.
Yeah, and for me, I know it's not my best, but in 2021, um, I was monitoring a eastern screech-owl nest, which they nest in cavities in trees about 10 feet off the ground. And I was waiting. I could usually see the parent, the mom, come out into the cavity once or twice a day and also around sunset. Um, but I hadn't seen the kids yet. And then one morning, actually, I saw a mom in the nest cavity, and then all of a sudden, one of the owlets, there actually were two of them, but one of the owlets um, squeezed into the nest cavity, and there really wasn't room for both. And you could see that mom, you could see the expression on the female was not good. She was really annoyed because these owlets were getting bigger. And then the owlet was just trying to squeeze, and you could see him at the bottom of the opening. And I took it and I sent it into it was what do they call it? The Wildlife Comedy Photo Awards, and it did really well in that competition. And they have a really good, you get really good exposure. You know, I was interviewed by CNN, and you know, I don't know how they do it, but their media coverage is tremendous. And so it's not technically the best thing I've ever done. You know, it didn't have the amount of pixels that I wanted, so you can't even really print it beyond something like 11 by 14, or that's probably the best size. I wouldn't go higher, but I got a huge amount of exposure, and when you see it, it's just a really fun photograph, and I called it a tight fit. And I still get sales from it even now. So just a wonderful experience.
Nice.
What's everybody's thought process as you approach an animal? What do you look for first?
My primary thing is I want it to go about its own business. I don't want it reacting to me. I want to catch it as natural as possible. And sometimes those look straight at you, make great photos, but I want to capture kind of what it's doing without my presence.
Yeah, I
You
don't
know,
want to spook. I don't want to spook it. I mean, so I approach it really carefully, and I want it, like, particularly for some of my subjects, for the owls. I do want. I mean, the owls, they're all about their eyes, and so I have to admit that I want to be able to get that photograph of them looking at me. But by the same token, I don't want to intimidate them and then spook them and then make them feel uncomfortable and then ultimately have them fly away. And I've seen it, whether it's I do it or someone else. So um, it's really. I think the more time you spend in the field, you get better at it. You really get a feeling for what you can do and how not to stress them.
when I approach an animal, I'm always looking for background first.
Huh.
And I know what the subject is, but you got to have a good background. and whether it's good scenery or real diffuse background, I'll always try and get in position to get that.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Pete. About 4 or 5 years ago, I thought I knew a lot about wildlife photography, and I started taking um a classes with a guy by the name of Tin Man Lee. And Tin Man was all about backgrounds, non-distracting,
Yeah.
dreamy backgrounds. And he would tell us, you gotta move, you gotta change your position. It's not all about the subject, it's about the background. And so I think your point, Pete, is really good. I think background and perspective, and I mean, there's a number of parameters that make a photograph really a pillar, or just another photograph. And a lot has to do with perspective and background and, impact, I guess emotional impact, you would say, in that.
Yeah, well, and once I get the background the way I want it, after that it's all about light.
Without good light, you're wasting your time.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of times, I'll go somewhere and the light's just not right. I won't even get my camera out because the light isn't right. My kids will be like, "Dad, take a picture of it. Take a picture of it." No, the light's not right, guys.
As
You know,
I get
we're
older, I get more picky.
Yeah.
Yeah, when we're on the lake and we're photographing the loons, I mean, the sun is where it is, and so and it's admittedly it's early in the morning, so it's you could say it's nice light, but it's not nice if you're looking into the sun or whatever. But I've gotten to the point where I don't necessarily have to have perfect light that where the sun is behind me and I'm between the sun and the subject. I mean, I've gotten to realize that side light or even rim light can be good. You just, and I don't always even know that it's going to be good at the time, but I take it, in other words, I shoot it and ask questions later, so to speak. And I wait to get home and see what it looks like. But I'm often surprised by how good side light, for example, can look when you think to yourself, you're not in the right position, but the action is happening. The bird is giving you the expression that you want, and you don't have time to roll over to exactly the right light angle. But when you look at it, sometimes it's pretty good. So now I don't say, oh, I don't want to shoot it. I shoot it. And then, it's digital. I'll get rid of it if it's no good.
Well, yeah, I think that's the way to go. Don't pass up shots.
Yeah, I think that the key is you want it to be appealing, regardless of what the scenario is. If it's fascinating, if it's interesting, appealing, all that. If you're checking boxes off, then it doesn't matter the angle.
Whether it was inadvertently or on purpose, have any of you ever put yourselves in harm's way to get a wildlife photo?
Try not to. Try. One of my biggest things, and I tell people, oh, you need to study animal behavior, kind of know what they're doing, what they're going to do, and then either avoid the hard situations. The only time that I remember a situation, a guy named Ron Shade and I were up in Canada, up in Waterton, Canada. We were after black bears primarily in June, and there was a sow with 3 cubs, and we did not immediately spot them. We were hiking up a trail and ended up here they were, and they were within 100 yards of us, less than 100 yards. And she woofed, put all 3 cubs up in the tree, and then turned and faced us. And we both said, we got to go. We need to move now. And we did. And, we did not intentionally, come upon her, but we came upon them and we had to recognize the situation and get ourselves out of there.
You know Ron Shade?
Yes. I've known Ron for 35 years.
Well, yeah, that's about the length of time I've known him.
I've kind of
I
lost
haven't
touch with him over the
talked-
years.
Is he still in Cutbank?
Well, at last I knew he was in Hungry Horse, so but he's on social media, but
Oh,
he's never there. So I have not talked to him in a long time.
yeah, it's about the way I am. That was a name I hadn't heard in a while.
Does everybody have a piece of advice that you can give listeners for tack sharp wildlife photos?
Back in the day, everybody said, use your tripod. And now nobody uses a tripod. So I'm not going to say that. Uh, I would say there's several keys, and I think everyone would agree with this. Make sure your shutter speed is conducive to what you're shooting. If you're going to be hand holding, make sure you're steady. Uh, Brace yourself. And these days with high frame rates, shoot a burst because even if you shoot 20 and you're at a lower shutter speed, you're going to get a couple that are going to be sharp out of that.
Yeah, I think particularly for flying birds, birds in flight, I think we worry. Well, here's the thing: we worry a little bit too much about shutter speed and ISO, high ISO. And I think, first of all, I think you, I think you have to be in the field a lot. Like, for example, you have to know what bird you're dealing with. So if you're looking at an osprey or a harrier, they don't flap their wings that thin, right? So you can get away with a slower shutter speed, thousandth of a second, maybe 1250, but maybe even 800ths of a second, and you can get the wing tips. Not maybe not on every frame, but you can get the wing tips fairly. You can get them sharp. The whole bird will be tack sharp, but on a thousandth of a second, it'll work. On the other hand, if you're taking a passerine songbird, or the extreme example would be a hummingbird, but you can't consider a thousandth of a second. It's not fast enough. And so you have to determine really what kind of bird you're dealing with. And that comes a lot by your experience because you try these different shutter speeds and they either work or they don't work. And the other side to that is the ISO that, we're all really kind of worried about the ISO. So we try to keep the shutter speed down, but with all the programs, the Topaz programs and the other ones, for cleaning up, as long as your exposure is correct and you haven't underexposed, then very often you can deal with high ISOs and reduce the noise. So I think, I'm getting to the point where I'm not as afraid of high ISOs as I used to be. I'm more concerned with making sure the shutter speed is adequate, because if it isn't adequate, it doesn't matter because I'm not going to go any further. I'm never going to do anything with that photograph if it's not really that sharp.
I've never taken a picture without a tripod or a beanbag, so I still rely on the tripod. I've got a hand tremor, so I can't handhold anything. So it takes a little more time to set up, but the results make it worth losing a couple shots in the time you take to set it up.
Yeah, I remember, going to Yellowstone, Tetons area, and you would see tripods lined up. Anymore, you'll see a few tripods, and everybody else
Yeah.
is hand holding 600 and even 800 lenses. And you can do so much better if you just take the time to put it on a tripod. Typically, when I want to be mobile and moving, I will use a monopod, and I have a gimbal head on it. It makes it very flexible. A monopod with
Oh,
a
okay.
600 does fantastic.
You guys like to shoot a lot in storms? Get out when it's storming and shoot wildlife?
Bad weather means good pictures.
I do like
Snow is great.
I do like it when it's raining. I don't like it when it's blowing sideways, but good heavy rain and wet animals, I think look fantastic. I just my experience in Brazil and the Pantanal with the wet jaguar, I love the shots I got there. And then I shoot black-tailed deer in October, November, and a lot of times we're getting heavy rain and a good wet antlers and a wet deer, I think look fantastic.
I like to shoot animals in fog. I mean, when we go to the Smokies to shoot the elk, um, oftentimes in the early morning, just right after sunrise, there's a lot of fog because it's been a cold night. And if there isn't too much, I mean, fog is, I would say it depends. So if the fog is behind the animal and the animal is just in front of it, well, that's ideal. If the animal is, like the elk, for example, is right in the middle of the fog and it's really thick fog, then it's hard to focus on it. So, it's not a clear answer, but in certain circumstances, fog really gives a certain feeling, a moodiness to the image that I love that. But I'm not crazy personally about shooting in the rain. And given where I live, I can't remember the last time I shot in the snow, although that's really appealing to me. So I hope that I'll get to Yellowstone in the winter and be able to try it out in the snow. But that is very appealing. But the rain, I could do without it.
I think with the rain saturates the colors a little more. So
Hmm.
I'd agree with you about shooting in the rain.
Yep, agreed.
I've got 4 kids, and a lot of times I'll take them to go take pictures with me. And anytime the weather gets bad, storm comes up or anything like that, my kids will come up to me, Dad, are we going to go take pictures? It's bad weather.
Well, I have friends, photographers that love to photograph lightning strikes. And um, some of the images that they have published is just unbelievable. And I'm kind of wedded to wildlife, but my goodness, And in Florida, it's so hot in the summer that a lot of these guys will photograph lightning strikes because there's not a lot of wildlife that you can find in the heat of the summer, and they don't even want to be out in it. But some of the stuff that I've seen on the lightning strikes is just absolutely amazing.
I love doing pictures of lightning. It's a lot of fun. I got a rain cape that I put over my camera so it doesn't get drenched, even though it is weather sealed, but I don't know how much I trust that. Um, it's not waterproof, it's weather sealed. So I use that rain cape, and then I have the app on my phone where I can sync up with my camera. And so a lot of times I'll have my camera set up on a tripod outside in a lightning storm and be sitting in my car taking the pictures.
That's the way to do it.
What is everybody's thoughts on how AI is changing the state of photography?
Well, I'm sure that
Well,
I'm sure it's a lot tougher to sell your images with AI. And like I said earlier, I never made a living from wildlife photography, but I know people, some of my better friends are wildlife photographers, and they don't make their money to support them and their families based on selling prints. They lead groups, and they provide, you know, Zoom type calls and YouTube videos, and where they could have done a lot better by selling their prints in the quote old days. Now with AI, it's so much harder to sell your prints.
For that aspect, it's
I
much more.
hate it.
Go ahead, Pete.
I hate it. I think it's dishonest, and I'd never do it. You may get a better image, but it's not worth it.
One thing that AI cannot replace, and that is your experience in the field, that you and the wildlife and what it took to capture the image. I mean, they can
Exactly.
once you've got an image, you can whatever, but nothing can replace that experience.
Right.
I sell a lot of my prints at the farmers market here in town, and I actually have a disclaimer that I have posted that my images are not, I do not use AI to generate my images. All of them are genuine. And I think a lot of people appreciate that I don't use AI for any of my photography.
It used to
Yeah.
be people would say, "Well, you photoshopped that," and I've actually been accused of that. And at the time, I never even owned Photoshop, and it wasn't
Yeah.
possible, and I didn't have the skills, editing skills, to do it anyway. And even as recently as last November, I had people accusing me of a very large mule deer buck that the photos were AI, and I do not use AI. I'm shooting an image through a camera. That's it. And people still will accuse you wrongly. Uh, I've seen other people too, and I happen to know them and know that they did not do that. So it's it's created some different scenarios.
That bear picture I described, I had a number of people on Facebook accuse me of it being AI.
Yeah.
I didn't even ask
Now,
them.
I will add, I mean, I think I understand the kind of AI you're talking about, but with some of the programs like Lightroom and Photoshop, I mean, that's a different kind of AI, but it's AI. So, the way they reduce noise,
Yeah,
whether it's Lightroom or it's Topaz, but Lightroom too. I mean, that's AI generated. So some of the competitions, the photo competitions won't allow they I guess they have software that you can run to tell if there's been any AI used. And and the standard programs like Lightroom and Photoshop use a lot of AI. So, you know, if you're just going to call it AI and not the kind of AI that creates a photograph when it wasn't taken with a camera, that's one kind of AI. And I think we're all in agreement that, nobody wants to get involved with that or even get defensive when somebody accuses us of using AI, that kind of AI to generate an image. But the other kind of AI, um, sure, I use it. I mean, I use the remove tool sometimes in Photoshop. I
Yeah.
use Topaz denoise. It's AI, and I don't have an issue with that kind of AI. And so the question then always becomes, well, where's the line? And where you're not going to cross.
Yeah, for sure.
well, that's a good point on the other kind of AI because I use Topaz too.
Yeah, I do
And
use Topaz as well.
I'm talking about people that create images
Yeah.
with AI.
Yeah, I know.
And I think, for instance, and it's how easily people are duped. There was, when this first kind of came out, you were seeing on social media a picture of an eagle with two baby eagles in full adult plumage. And people were just raving how beautiful this was. Like, this is not even realistic, people. This does not happen in nature. And, and those are the kind of things I'm like just shaking my head at.
I was accused the other day at the farmer's market of using AI in one of my astrophotography pictures. Um, they just, and I explained to them that it was a long shutter speed that the car drove by, and that's why that has the lights through it, the car, and they just could not grasp that a camera's shutter could be open for a long period of time to capture motion.
Yeah, I think the tough part is, I mean, the kind of AI that's obvious, that Terry was talking about, the two eaglets that have adult plumage. Well, that's a certain kind of AI, and you look at that and you kind of laugh it off. But there's other kinds of AI that, you see an image, and I myself, I see it on, say, Facebook, and I say, was that generated by AI or was that actually taken? And the truth is, I don't know. And a couple of days ago, I had posted a photograph I took of an owl, and it was perfect. I mean, it was just one of those mornings that it was just a perfect shot, perfect background, everything was perfect. And somebody asked me, they said, is that AI? And I remember thinking, I didn't like it because now I took this perfect image, but they didn't think it was a perfect real image. They thought it was a constructed image by AI. So I think it's something we have to deal with, but it's all gradations of it. It's a whole spectrum of issues.
And I get frustrated because I used to actually make pretty good money selling stock photos on Shutterstock and Adobe Stock and those places. And now I'm lucky if I make $20 in a 6 month period
Really? Wow.
because a
Because
lot of them
most of the
a lot of people just generate their pictures with AI now for stock
Right.
photos.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what are some essential items that all of you have, or some of you might have in your camera bags, other than cameras and lenses, that you would not go without for wildlife photography?
A supportive spouse.
But she doesn't like it when I cram her in the bag, though.
Right. For me, I would say binoculars. I mean, I started out as a birder, so I sort of morphed into wildlife photography, but initially I was a bird watcher. And binoculars were the key uh, thing you had to have. And so now I've got my binoculars all the time, and they're invaluable for seeing something that you can also see with your lens. You have a 600 millimeter lens, you can look through the viewfinder, but you don't have a field of view like you do with a good set of binoculars. And the magnification is still not as strong. So I would say hands down binoculars.
Yeah, I would agree.
I would mirror that as well. I do a lot of traveling with my truck, right? And my console, I have a bean bag, and on top of the bean bag is my binoculars, and I feel naked without them.
Yeah. Yep. I've got a pair of binoculars in my camera bag as well that I carry with me, but like I said, I don't do a whole lot of wildlife photography, so they don't come out as much as I'm sure you guys is, but I don't go anywhere without them. Where can listeners go to find your work and look you up and look at your photos?
Well, for me, I would say Facebook, Instagram, Flickr. Those are the three main ones.
My two
Yeah,
primary. Oh, go ahead, Pete.
I put a picture on Facebook every day, so people could look me up on Facebook. I put them on Instagram too, but I don't like Instagram as well. I don't like the way they crop the images.
And Pete, would you mind spelling out your name so people can find you?
Bengeyfield.
My photos you can find on my website. I'm not very good at updating my website, but I have links on my website to my Facebook and Instagram and YouTube and everything else, which is www.wyophotos.us. That's wyophotos.us. How about you, Terry?
And I'm Terry W. Smith on Facebook. And then my Instagram is Images on the Outside. And then one of my photo Facebook page is also Terry W. Smith Images on the Outside.
And I have a website too. It's PeteBengeyfield.com.
Okay, good. I will have to take a look at that. And thank you, everybody, very much for being on today. I appreciate you joining me for the call, and hope you have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Okay.
Thank you, guys.
Take it easy, you guys.
Good night.
This was the Rocky Mountain Photography Show. Please visit us online at RockyMountainPhotoshow.com. Thank you for listening and have a great day.